In this story, St. Nicholas reviews his life and some of the legends that grew up after he died. He then talks about Christmas gift giving and how he has decided to outsource the whole of the Santa season to Amazon. I was born in the town of Patara, now part of modern Turkey, on March the 15th in the year 270, to a wealthy Christian family of Greek heritage. My parents died in an epidemic of the plague when I was quite young, and I was raised by my uncle, who was also called Nicholas. He happened to be the Bishop of Patara. Perhaps unsurprisingly, given my early upbringing, I was very devout from an early age. In my youth, I made an extended pilgrimage that included the great Christian centre of Alexandria in Egypt, as well as the major sites in the Holy Land associated with the life of Jesus Christ: Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, etc. Upon my return to Patara, I was ordained a presbyter by my uncle, and eventually I followed him into the episcopate in the year 317. There I ministered to the people of Myra, not far from my birthplace. In those turbulent times, Christians frequently suffered persecution, and I had to spend some time in prison for my faith while Diocletian was the emperor. However, later, after the accession of Emperor Constantine, I was honoured to be called as a delegate to the Council of Nicaea in 325. At that council, I was a signatory to the Nicene Creed, having spoken forcefully against the pernicious doctrine advanced by the Alexandrian Bishop Arius. He had asserted that Christ was the first creation of the Father, rather than having been eternally present with the Father, as is stated unequivocally in the first chapter of St. John's Gospel. After my death, many miracles were attributed to me. In truth, many of them are completely fanciful. There's no truth whatsoever in the so-called miracle that happened during a terrible famine, when it was alleged that an evil butcher killed 3 children, intending to cure their bodies to sell as ham. Allegedly, the children were brought back to life and rescued by my prayers, but there's no truth in this whatsoever. A different famine story has some basis in fact, though it was much embellished. It concerns a ship in the port of Myra. It was loaded with wheat for export to Rome. This provoked great anger among the citizenry because local produce was being shipped to Rome while the citizens went hungry. In my capacity as bishop, I insisted that part of the load be removed to feed the starving citizens of Myra. The alleged miracle was that when the ship finally arrived at Rome, the weight of the load was as if nothing had been unloaded in Myra. Of course, the truth is that additional stone had to be placed in the ship's keel in order to maintain its form of buoyancy. There's also a kernel of truth in the events that took place during the pilgrimage that I previously mentioned. The first night en route to Alexandria, I dreamt that a great storm was imminent. I warned the sailors but assured them that God would protect us all. During the storm, one sailor fell to the deck while he was securing the ship's rigging. I prayed for the storm to end. Meanwhile, the fallen sailor seemed to have been killed, but he revived when I offered prayers on his behalf. Another activity with a basis in fact was that as a scion of a wealthy family, I felt obliged to help people less fortunate by secretly giving them gifts. One such story, which became greatly elaborated, concerns the help I gave to a poor man who could not afford dowries for his 3 daughters. He was worried that when he died, his daughters would have no option but to become prostitutes, as they had no money. People assert that I went to the man's house at night and threw 3 purses, one for each daughter, filled with gold coins through the window. A later addition to the story even claimed that I threw one of the purses down the poor man's chimney, where it fell into a stocking that one of his daughters had held up to dry in front of the fire. Frankly, scrambling over rooftops to drop purses down chimneys was never part of my Episcopal activities. But it's easy to see how my charitable activities, once embellished, formed the basis of the legend of St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, or Santa Claus as a secret gift giver. Originally, small, secret gifts were given on December the 6th, the anniversary of my death, but this tradition has now been transferred to Christmas Eve in many countries. Alas, Santa Claus has transformed Sinterklaas out of all recognition. Small gifts of charity and tokens of love to those close to one have expanded, dare I say, cancer-like, into a veritable orgy of consumerism. No gift now seems too expensive. None seems so far removed from a token of affection that it cannot be advertised for purchase at the Christmas season. I find it ironical that it was in my own time, during the 4th century, that the institutional Western Church decided that Christ's birth should be celebrated on December the 25th, once Christianity had become a favoured religion in the empire. One intent, of course, was for Christianity gradually to usurp the Roman feast of Saturnalia, which was a week-long debauch of parties, gift-giving and drunkenness. Although this may have worked reasonably well for several centuries, in more recent times I observe that the reverse usurpation has transpired. The customs of Saturnalia have so triumphed over the celebration of the humble Christ child's birth that many families no longer even associate the word Christmas with the birth of the Holy Child. As for me, I am now associated with secret gift-giving only among the toddler set, who have taken to heart the legend of the purse deposited down a chimney into a girl's stocking drying by the fire. So numerous, so munificent are the gifts today that many children are unable to open them all in a single sitting. The younger ones in particular losing interest before every parcel can be unwrapped. In such circumstances, grandparents are frequently deputed to transport home those gifts that cannot be accommodated in automobile trunks or airplane baggage allowances. I'm also led to understand that I'm now the chief executive officer of a major industry that's located at the North Pole. There, I apparently supervise an army of elves who labour year-round to produce gifts for children who neither really want nor need them. In this activity, or perhaps I should say industrial operation, I'm apparently assisted by a Mrs. Claus, despite having been celibate in my former life, since I was a bishop. The elves have the specific task on Christmas Eve of loading the gifts onto a miraculous sleigh, which it is supposed is powered by a team of 8 flying reindeer, as I drive through the night skies. This particular fable originated in a secular poem called The Night Before Christmas, written by Clement Clarke Moore, or possibly by Henry Livingstone, and first published in 1823 in an American newspaper. I have considered the logistics of this endeavour, especially as the secret gifts have become larger and more numerous with time. Does the magic sleigh get refilled? If so, how? Are there the equivalent of tanker planes to refuel the sleigh with gifts? What do the reindeer eat on their long journey? Are lichens and water supplied somewhere on the sleigh? What about my own physical needs? Is there a toilet at the back of the sleigh? Perhaps even more importantly, is it heated? Enough of all that. It's come to my attention that technology may already be displacing my Christmas gig, as they say. Increasingly, gifts are delivered directly to the homes of their recipients using Amazon Prime. Accordingly, I decided to forestall the inevitable. Last week, I made an appointment to see Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, at which we came to the following agreement. As of next year, Amazon will become the preferred vendor and delivery agent for all gift packages on or before Christmas Eve. The St. Nicholas Foundation has granted Amazon an exclusive license for using the name and all images associated with Santa Claus for a license fee of $10 million annually to be adjusted for inflation and an upfront payment of $100 million. Amazon will be responsible for recruiting Santas to staff all Santa Claus parades and shopping mall Santas, and will collect all royalties connected with the Santa season, as Christmas will henceforth be known to the secular world. The St. Nicholas Foundation will invest the capital payment in a worldwide chain of retreat centres. I'm considering the name Poles Apart retreat centres. These will be available for those wishing to avoid the rampant consumerism of the Santa season in order to celebrate Christ's birth quietly and reverentially. The ongoing payments will be used to pay for the staff, upkeep of the facility, and to subsidise the centre's retreat fees for the less affluent. I will act as in my episcopal role as chief pastor to attendees at the North Pole franchise. The chief liturgist at each retreat centre will be known henceforth as Father Christmas during the season from Advent to Epiphany. In recognition of the change, Amazon has agreed that in those countries such as England, where secret gifts have hitherto been delivered by Father Christmas, there will be uniform worldwide conversion to the Santa Claus brand. Midnight Mass will be celebrated at the retreat centres beginning at 11:30 local time on Christmas Eve, using the Liturgy of St. James. This Eucharistic rite was used by the Antioch Church during my time in Lerna. By tradition, the St. James identified in the name of this rite is James, the brother of Jesus, who was a leader of the early Jerusalem church. In order to allow participation by those of many tongues at the Poles Apart retreats, the St. James liturgy will be offered in appropriate translations. May the blessings of the Christ child, the light of the world, be with you this Christmas season, not this Santa season, and always.